Hello, you, the one listening to this voice, somewhere in the middle of what feels like an ordinary day. But maybe, just maybe, something is already moving quietly beneath the surface of your life. Have you ever felt your heart ache for no reason, or sensed that something big was coming, something your soul already knew, even when your mind couldn't name it? Perhaps that feeling isn't random at all. Perhaps it's the very first signal of a divine intervention. Right now, I just want you to pause, take a deep breath, let your thoughts settle like dust in still air. Because what you're about to hear isn't just words, it's a doorway, a path where light begins to slip through the smallest cracks inside you. And now, let me tell you about the first sign of that awakening. Have you ever sat alone in a dark room, hearing nothing but the sound of your own breath, and felt as if the universe was quietly whispering your name? Maybe it happened on one of those endless nights when every door seemed closed, or in a gray morning when you no longer knew what to believe in. In that moment, even when you thought you were alone, there was a sacred gaze watching over you, a look without judgment, without pressure, only quiet understanding. People often think silence means absence, but sometimes, in God's silence, there is the sound of preparation. Because light does not reveal its holiness under the noonday sun, it becomes divine only when it dares to shine in the darkest night. And you, Aries, you are that flame, a soul tested to prove that even in darkness, light can still choose to exist. You've endured more than anyone knows. You've smiled when your heart wanted to collapse, stayed up through the long nights wondering if anyone could ever understand how tired you were. But in those moments when you thought you were falling apart, God was gathering your broken pieces, reshaping them into something stronger, brighter, and kinder. He saw you, Aries. He saw you forgive when you had every right to be angry. He saw you help others while you were still bleeding. He saw you pray, believe, and keep your goodness intact when the world tried to make you bitter. And because of that, the intervention begins. Not to punish, but to restore. Not to make you afraid, but to remind you that miracles are not far away, they are the reward of patience and faith. What's coming might make you tremble not because it's harsh, but because it's so right, so pure, so perfectly timed that the human heart can hardly believe it. When destiny rearranges your path, some things will fall away, relationships will fade, dreams once solid may dissolve. But believe me, nothing is lost in vain. The universe never takes it, only clears the way for what is better to find you. You might feel unsteady. There will be moments you look back and whisper, "Why is everything changing so fast?" But remember, change is never the enemy. It's the invisible hand opening a new door. During this time, be still. Listen not just to the world outside, but to the quiet voice within, the one that gently tells you a new wind is rising, carrying messages from the light. And in the pause between two breaths, you'll understand the struggles you've endured were never meaningless. They were the sacred training for the light now approaching you. Like the sun breaking after the longest night, your soul is crossing into a new dawn. So don't fear what's coming. It's not a storm, it's a rebirth. When you notice the light shifting around you, when strange little signs begin to repeat themselves, don't panic. It's the universe speaking to you, in the only language it knows, the language of faith. And now, as your heart quietly opens, take a slow breath, feel the air changing, listen to the wind. There's a voice inside it calling your name, a whisper from the unseen world, drawing closer. Because sometimes, the divine doesn't arrive with thunder, but in the softest breath, during the stillest moment. When the soul is finally ready to hear, there are days when you suddenly stop in the middle of the street and feel the wind change direction. A soft beam of light slips through the trees, reflecting on the ground like a quiet greeting from somewhere far away. You can't explain it, you just know your heart softens for a moment, a strange, tender ache, both warm and full of wonder. Maybe it happens when the clock strikes 11:11, or when you overhear someone mention a new beginning. Nothing is random. Every signal has a sender, and the receiver is always the soul that's ready to listen. The flickering lights aren't a glitch. They're how the universe says a door is opening. Every dream you remember in the morning, every coincidental meeting, is another line in the long letter God has been writing to you. He doesn't use words, he speaks through frequency. And your sensitive soul has started to recognize every vibration of it. Pay attention. An old song suddenly plays with lyrics you needed to hear. A call comes from someone you haven't spoken to in years, reminding you of something you forgot. A white butterfly lands on your shoulder right when you're lost in thought about your life. These are not just moments, they're the language of the unseen world. When your heart is calm, you can read these messages floating around you like a faint perfume in the air. There's a quiet law in the realm of faith. When you ask with your heart, the universe answers with signs. Most people don't see them because they're too busy with the noise of worry, fear, and wanting. The wise don't chase grand omens, they listen to the small things. A kind look, an unexpected chance, a simple word from a stranger sometimes. That's the divine hand touching your life. Some signals don't come to warn you but to comfort you. They remind you that you are not alone, that every moment of waiting is being arranged in perfect order. And sometimes, just a gentle breeze is enough to tell you that on the other side of this visible world, someone is watching over you. That's not superstition, it's the sacred instinct of a human being who knows they belong to something greater. You might call it faith, or energy, or simply love. Whatever name you choose, it's all the same essence, a force guiding you toward awakening. This world isn't as rigid as it seems. It's soft, responsive, and deeply alive. When you shift your vibration from doubt to trust, from fear to gratitude, the air around you shifts too. Everything begins to communicate with you in a new language, subtle, holy, alive. Paying attention to small signs is a form of wisdom. The wise are not those who can explain everything, but those who can stay silent long enough to feel the miracle unfolding. Every time you pause, take a deep breath, and whisper, "I'm ready to listen," you'll be surprised everything begins to answer. Not with words, but with a quiet peace expanding in your chest, as if someone invisible has placed a gentle hand over your heart and said, "I'm here." The world is still whispering to you through every glimmer of light, every breeze, every dream, every intuition that brushes past. Not everyone can hear it, but you can because you've lived through enough darkness to know that light never truly disappears. It only hides, waiting for the moment you're still enough to see it. And now, as the signs grow stronger around you, don't be afraid. Each vibration, each shift, is a confirmation, a promise that a new chapter is opening. But before every miracle begins, the universe must always do one last thing. Let the old energies collide and dissolve, like the sound of waves breaking, before the sea returns to peace. Every soul, no matter how strong, will come to a season when everything seems to fall apart. Plans that once felt solid suddenly turn fragile. Relationships you thought would last forever begin to fade without warning. You look around, confused, wondering how life could change so quickly. But that's when the wheel of destiny begins to turn, moving you away from what no longer fits and guiding you toward the place where you truly belong. It's like the meeting of two rivers. The water becomes rough, swirling, murky. Yet after the turbulence, a new current is born, stronger, clearer, and heading in a new direction. The clash of energies in your life works the same way. It doesn't come to destroy, but to purify. Not to frighten you, but to align you. Everything that no longer vibrates with your soul must dissolve, so that what belongs to the light can find its way closer. In the language of Buddhism, loss is not the end. It is a ritual of transformation. Just like a leaf that falls, not to die but to return to the earth, becoming nourishment for the next spring. We are the same. Everything you lose is part of a greater process where your soul learns to release, to trust, and to begin again without resentment. Remember this: The collisions in life are never punishments. They're mirrors. When old and new energies collide, you see yourself more clearly than ever before. Your fears, your habits, your true faith. Most people run from those shocks. But the awakened one stands still and watching, allowing the universe to rearrange itself around them. There will be days when you feel like you're falling into a void with nothing solid to hold on to. That isn't failure, it's cleansing. The universe is clearing space for what's meant to come. Like a gardener before planting again, life must pull the weeds, turn the soil, and cut away the withered branches. It's painful, yes, but necessary. Because nothing can bloom in ground that hasn't been renewed. When energy shifts, you shift too, and not everyone will travel with you. Some people will choose different directions, let them go. Every soul has its own lessons to learn. Letting go isn't forgetting, it's honoring the divine timing for you both. And when you allow things to leave naturally, you're telling the universe, I trust your plan. Sometimes the collision doesn't happen outside of you, it happens inside. One part of you wants to hold on, another longs to be free. That inner battle is sacred, because it's through that tension that you finally learn to hear the true voice of your soul. The more you resist, the heavier it feels. But when you begin to accept, everything softens. Peace doesn't come when the storm ends. It comes when you stop fearing the thunder. Some things that once felt like light will become heavy. Some relationships that were once warm will begin to drain you. Some dreams that once gave you hope will fade into shadows of what they used to be. Let them go. Everything has a cycle. No one can hold on to summer forever, and no one can stop autumn from arriving. Only by embracing change can life be reborn. When you find yourself standing at the crossroads between the old and the new, don't panic. That chaos you feel is simply the sign of rebalancing. Let your heart be your compass. It knows the way toward the light. And sometimes, the brightest path begins in a bend of darkness. Within every clash, there's a quiet message. Trust this is not the end. This is the alignment that brings you back to your true frequency. Pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. If you listen closely, you'll feel the energy moving all around you, light as breath, warm as a gentle hand resting on your shoulder. And in that stillness, your soul begins to understand the sacred is not found in avoiding the collision, but in standing within it, with your heart still bright and your kindness still intact. And one day, when the dust settles, you'll see clearly why everything had to leave, because the emptiness it left behind was the very space where the light could finally enter. And in that silence, the deepest truth reveals itself, a lesson written just for you, soft as a breath, but strong enough to change everything that comes after. No soul enters the stage of true growth without walking through a long silence first. After all the clashes, after everything seems to have fallen apart, there comes a stillness. No noise, no answers, only you and yourself. But this emptiness isn't meaningless, it's sacred. It's the initiation of the soul, the moment you're invited to trust what you cannot see and to surrender to something far greater than your own understanding. In those moments, the universe isn't asking you to fight. It's asking you to pause, to breathe, to trust. Trust that what you lost wasn't a mistake. Trust that what you don't yet have is being prepared in the quiet. And trust that even if you can't see the path, the light is still there right ahead, just one step away. Most people think faith means waiting for the miracle to happen. But in truth, faith is living as if the miracle is already on its way. It's setting the table, even when you don't know who's coming to dinner. It's tending the garden, even while the rain still falls. It's smiling each morning, even when there's no clear reason to. That calm, gentle act, that's the declaration of a soul that has conquered fear. I believe. In those moments, you are no longer the one who begs, you become a co-creator. The universe doesn't respond with thunder. It answers with subtle movements, tiny shifts that only the still-hearted can feel. A message from an old friend, a look of compassion from a stranger, a sudden thought that changes your direction. That is the invisible hand, quietly placing everything back where it belongs. The true initiation doesn't happen in a temple, it happens in the rhythm of your own heart. Every time you choose love over anger, patience over panic, you pass another layer of the test. God doesn't send trials to break you, He sends them so you can see your strength. Because real light is never given, it's discovered. And then one morning, you wake with a strange peace. Everything looks the same, but it no longer scares you. The storm is still out there, but you no longer tremble. The old memories remain, but they don't weigh you down anymore. That's the sign you've crossed the threshold. Your soul has stepped from understanding into trust. It isn't easy to arrive here. There will be sleepless nights, days of doubt, moments when you'll want to give up. But remember, every time you choose to keep going, the universe takes one step closer to you. And in the quietest hours, when you think no one hears your prayer, that's when He's listening most intently. Life doesn't need you to control it. It just needs you to believe that every piece has its purpose. When you let go, you're not giving up. You're allowing the current to carry you to where you were meant to be. Like a seed that doesn't know when it will sprout, it only trusts the light and keeps reaching. Imagine standing before an old wooden door. On the other side lies your new world, but the key, it's held by your heart. Each small act of belief turns the lock a little, and when you finally trust completely, the door opens silently, and a gentle, golden light floods in warm, kind, and alive. If this inner initiation could speak, its message would be simple. Faith isn't waiting for the good to come. It's living as though it's already here. Because only when you believe, the divine protection appears not from outside you, but from within, from the same light you thought had gone out, but was only waiting for your trust to bring it back to life. And when the heart is open, when the breath runs deep, you realize there's nothing left to fear. A quiet power begins to bloom inside you, soft, steady, unbreakable. The whole world within becomes clear, as though the clouds have finally drifted away. And in that stillness, something new arrives, gentle, calm, yet powerful. A presence without a name, only a feeling, the sense that you are being held, protected, and that somewhere within you, a new light has begun to awaken. There are things in life that seem to pass quietly, unseen, unnoticed, but in truth, everything is being written in the invisible book of the universe. Every tear you've ever shed, every time you chose silence instead of striking back, every time you helped someone, even when you were exhausted, none of it went unseen. Not by people, but by the divine, the one who has been watching you with eyes full of compassion. We often think justice comes from human courts, but there is another kind, quieter, exact, and unfailing, heaven's justice. It doesn't rush, it doesn't shout, it doesn't need to prove itself. It waits until your heart has grown gentle enough to see that revenge isn't victory, and forgiveness is the only true freedom. When you've walked through pain and kept your kindness, that's when the universe begins rearranging itself to return to you what is rightfully yours. God saw you. He saw you choose love when hate would have been easier. He saw you smile at those who hurt you. He saw you pray for the ones who caused your pain. He saw you stand tall when everything around you fell apart. He saw you keep walking when you didn't know where to go. And in that quiet strength, He recognized the real light of your soul, a light no one can extinguish because it was forged in fire. Divine justice doesn't arrive as material rewards. It comes as a beam of light piercing through your life, restoring balance where I thought it was gone. What was taken from you was never lost. It was transformed into wisdom, into compassion, into strength. And those gifts open a new door, a place where you no longer need to prove your worth, because peace itself becomes your proof. There will be moments when you'll wonder why those who caused you harm seem untouched. But in time, you'll understand the universe's justice isn't about punishment. It's about learning. Those who sow pain will one day have to feel it, just as you learned mercy through your own wounds. Every soul is led back into balance, each at their own pace, and when you stand here, after the long years of loss and waiting, you'll witness the miracle. Not a blazing reward, but a deep, quiet relief. You'll wake one morning, and your heart will be still. You won't crave apologies. You won't need acknowledgement. You'll simply feel grateful because you didn't become the kind of person your pain tried to make you. That is your greatest victory. God never forgets your tears. He keeps them as proof of your resilience. Every tear is a prayer He's already heard, waiting for the right moment to be answered. And that moment is drawing near. A gift is coming, not something you can earn, but something you can only receive through faith. Soon, something will appear, an opportunity, a word, a door that looks ordinary, but when it comes, you'll know. It will touch you like déjà vu, as if your soul had dreamt of it during lonely nights. And then you'll understand every pain was only the opening act of a miracle. Trust it, divine justice is never late. It simply waits until you are radiant enough to receive it without pride, and gentle enough to thank it without resentment. And when that gift arrives, you won't cry from sorrow anymore, but from understanding that everything, in the end, made sense. And perhaps, in that stillness, you'll hear it, the softest whisper in the wind, "You've done well." A simple phrase, but enough to make your entire journey worth it. You'll see that every heartbreak, every collapse, every night you thought would never end were the very bricks that built the temple of peace you now stand within. And as you lift your head, that light, the light of justice, of love, of faith, will wrap around you, quietly but completely. And in that light, you'll sense something new arriving, a fresh breath, a promise from the heavens themselves, that every trial was merely the prelude to a miracle about to be revealed. Every night must one day fade, and when dawn touches the horizon, you realize your heart is still beating quietly, steadfastly, and somehow softer than before. A star has just reignited within your soul, not because the sky changed, but because your eyes, after years of fear, finally dared to open. That star isn't far away, nor is it hanging high above. It lives inside you, in the place where light was once buried beneath sadness, anger, and the weight of all that was left unforgiven. And now, as the clouds drift away, you begin to see yourself again, not a broken being, but a soul learning to rise, carrying the flame of its own heart. Awakening never arrives with noise. It comes like a breath, a single drop falling into still water, rippling outward in quiet circles. You start to dream again, to believe again. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've realized you no longer need perfection to be at peace. Peace doesn't come from outside. It begins in the moment you choose to love what has already been, because even your pain shaped your gentleness, your depth, your truth. Forgiveness, that is the first miracle of awakening. You don't forgive to forget. You forgive to stop binding your soul to the net of the past. You no longer ask, "Why did they do it?" You whisper, "Thank you." Because through this, I learned to see myself. Forgiveness doesn't rewrite the past, it releases the present and opens a future that no longer carries resentment. In the light of this newly awakened star, you begin to understand love never left this world. It only hid behind the trials. Each wound that once broke you has become a doorway to understanding. You start to look at others with softer eyes, because now you know they too are fighting their own darkness. And when compassion blooms, you feel something extraordinary. The world within you and the world outside you start to move in rhythm. This awakening is not an ending, it's an invitation. An invitation to live honestly, to love sincerely, to trust deeply, to return to simplicity where a cup of morning tea, a gentle smile, or sunlight touching your hand is enough to make you grateful. When the heart is cleansed, even the smallest things become miracles. Many believe awakening means finding something grand, but in truth, It's the quiet moment you realize you already have everything and need nothing more to feel complete. That's when your soul rests in peace. No more running, no more proving. Just being, and that is sacred enough. The star within you shines brighter when you share it. Let your light reach those who are lost. A kind word, a patient ear, a simple smile, sometimes that's the little lantern that helps someone find their way back to faith. In a world so full of pain, every soul that loves becomes a star. And when millions of such stars light up, the sky of humanity will finally heal. None of us were born to fade. We were born to shine, to guide one another, to remember that light never truly disappears. It only hides, waiting for us to awaken it. Now, take a deep breath. Feel the fire in your chest, that's your star. It's returning, glowing, whispering, "I never left. I was only waiting for you to remember you are the light." And as you stand in that glow, everything becomes clear. You understand that no pain was wasted, no dream truly died. Everything was a perfect piece of a larger painting that God has been creating. And with every act of forgiveness, a new color appears on that canvas. And in that sacred moment, as your inner light merges with heaven's, a door opens quietly. A door to a place where contradictions find meaning, where fear turns into understanding, and where miracles begin to bloom with every breath you take. One day, when you look back on your journey, you'll finally understand why every door had to close, why the hands that once held yours had to let go, and why there were nights when you sat alone, wondering if there was ever a way out. None of it was punishment, it was training. The universe never meant to break you. It was quietly preparing you to walk forward in your own light. Some lessons can only be understood after the pain, because light can't teach you anything if your heart has never known the dark. In those shadowed chapters, you learned how to stand up without being lifted, how to stay silent instead of striking back, how to smile instead of hardening, and how to love without needing to be loved in return. Those soft choices, fragile as they seemed, became your purest strength. Now you know your faith is your sword of light, not to fight others but to protect the goodness within you. You don't need to win against anyone. You just need to keep the darkness inside from winning against you. That is real power. In this world, so many chase power, fame, and validation. But those whose souls have been broken and rebuilt know the highest victory to keep your kindness in the middle of chaos. You no longer need anyone to understand you because you understand yourself. You don't need anyone to measure your worth because you see it reflected in every act of grace, in every time you chose compassion over harm. Revelation never comes with thunder, it comes in quiet, a moment of peace, sunlight slipping through the window, and suddenly you know everything had a purpose. The lost roads helped you find direction. The pain showed you truth. The losses taught you how to cherish what remains. When your heart is still enough, the universe begins to speak. Not in words, but in signs, a chance meeting, a sentence that lingers, a subtle knowing that whispers, "This is where you're meant to be." That's how the universe confirms. You've walked through pain, and now you've entered meaning. Revelation of purpose isn't just knowing why you're here. It's realizing you are never separate from the whole. Everything you do, however small, touches someone else. A kind word, a gentle act, a truth spoken from the heart, these things can change a day, a life, a world. And once you understand that, you stop living just for yourself. The true purpose of life isn't to seek the light, it's to be the light. Not the kind that blinds, but the kind that warms. Not the light of glory, but the light born of love, faith, and generosity, given freely even when you have nothing left to keep. You've walked far to learn this, that the most precious thing is not what you gain, but what remains within you after you've lost everything. If you've lived through those nights where pain became a teacher, tears turned into prayers, and loneliness became strength, share your story. Because sometimes, the words you speak can heal someone still trapped in the darkness you've already crossed. When a soul speaks from truth, its light spread. And together, those small lights create an entire sky. Now you see, everything that once made you fall was a step leading you to your higher self. The universe never takes without giving something deeper in return. And in the moment you finally understand the pain, the waiting, the faith, you'll hear it. A soft sound within, like the breath of God whispering, "You have completed your lesson." And just then, something magnificent begins. No thunder, no applause, only life itself rising quietly inside you, pure, strong, radiant. A new chapter unfolding, where you no longer live to survive, but to shine. And from that moment on, the most beautiful thing of all arrives: rebirth. In the end, you understand the fear was never about losing. It was about expanding. This journey never took anything from you. It simply peeled away what was never truly you, revealing the essence where light has never stopped shining. You are no longer the person who entered the storm. You are the torch that walked through the darkness, burning with faith and emerging in your own radiant truth. Every pain now stands as proof of your courage. Every crack in your heart is no longer a flaw, but the place where light found a way in. The storm has passed, but what it left behind wasn't ruin, it was awakening. You look at the world now with different eyes, without judgment, without fear, only gratitude. Rebirth isn't starting over. It's living with the awareness that every single breath is sacred. You've learned to walk lighter, to love deeper, to forgive more easily. And when you release the need to control, life begins to bloom again. What you thought was lost returns in new forms, softer, truer, and more aligned with who you are. Along this path, you've learned that miracles don't arrive from the outside. They unfold from within. When your heart is calm, everything becomes a blessing. When your spirit is clear, every turn becomes the right path. You no longer need to know what comes next, because you are finally living fully in this moment, complete, awake, and free. A new chapter is opening, not with noise or fireworks, but with sacred stillness. You walk slowly, carrying gratitude like prayer beads in your heart, so that every step becomes an offering. Even the air feels lighter now, the sunlight gentler, and life, though still familiar, has softened into grace. When you are reborn, you no longer need to prove anything. Your very presence is proof enough that light is real. That faith, no matter how fragile, is still strong enough to carry a soul through its darkest night. That kindness is never wasted, and love will always be the final answer. Now everything within you is still. The things that once made you tremble have become reasons to give thanks. Every trial, every person, every ending was a teacher in disguise, showing you a simple truth. Nothing is ever truly lost. Everything is just transforming to guide you home to yourself. Look back on your journey as a sacred painting, the dark shades only making the light more vivid, the scars giving the image its truth. And at the center stands you, a soul washed clean by tears, forged in faith, and now shining in the peace of understanding. Rebirth is not a reward, it's the natural result of loving, believing, and walking through fear to touch the truth of who you are. Because only when the soul is broken open can the light finally pour out. Thank you for being brave enough to finish this journey. Thank you for believing, even without knowing where it would lead. Thank you for staying, for continuing, for turning your life itself into proof of faith in what is good. May your heart remain gentle, may your faith stay unshakable, and may your inner light never waver. Walk softly now, in peace, for the miracle you've been waiting for is near, not loud, not rushed, but whole, tender, and as quiet as the breath of the universe. Namaste. I send you love, peace, and the deepest gratitude. May your miracle arrive in stillness,